Hello and welcome to the Sun Network's first ever live Q&A. I'm KC, our drug and alcohol engagement facilitator, and I'm joined today by Susie Talbot, our public health commissioning team's manager, and Linda, our volunteer, who will be asking Susie some questions that our members have sent in. So, Linda, how are you feeling about this today?
Not too bad actually, quite excited, and hopefully this will come across and give somebody some inspiration.
Excellent.
Yeah,
great. And Susie, how are you doing today?
I'm feeling okay, so thank you very much for inviting me. A little bit nervous, obviously this is the first time I've done this as well, but hopefully people will benefit from it, which is the whole point of why I'm here. So thank you.
Brilliant. Right, so shall we get on with the first question then?
Right. How can people with addiction address their mental health without discrimination from GPs and mental health practitioners?
Well, thank you for the question. I think it might be worth just talking about what I do first, just so people have a bit of a background, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So my name is Susie Talbot, and I work in the local authority in the public health team, and I'm responsible for commissioning drug and alcohol services across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Now, a commissioner basically means that we not just procure services, which is kind of the buying in of services, but all the complex work that goes on behind it. So we assess needs, we then help address inequalities, we design and develop services, and then we continue to evaluate services. And that's why it's important that we have really good partnership with service user groups, for example, like the Sun Network, because they can provide really valuable feedback about how our services are working, whether there are any gaps, any barriers, and also some of the really positive work that is ongoing as well. So that's, I guess, my role, and I've been working in the drug and alcohol sector for just over 20 years, a frontline worker before I became a commissioner. So just a little bit of background about what I do, which might be useful. So in terms of the questions, you spoke about how people with addiction can address their mental health difficulties without discrimination. So over recent years, there's been a number of both national and local publications in order to address the way that we respond to individuals that are presenting with both mental health and drug and alcohol challenges. And we've developed a principles document that was published about 2 years ago, and it's got sign-up from all the key agencies across Cambridgeshire. So we're talking the CCG, we're talking local authorities, the Police Crime Commissioner, CPFT. And this document is really valuable because basically it ultimately says, it lays out that there should, that we need to work collaboratively together to meet the needs of these patients, and that's a joint need in terms of mental health and drugs and alcohol. That there should be absolutely no wrong door in the way that we're addressing issues. So, every door is a right door. So if people present to drug and alcohol services first, or whether they present to mental health services. And it's really important that this principles document is adhered to, because fundamentally this should be the way that we are expecting all of our services to respond. And these principles should be grounded into contracts that we have with providers, and in the way that we should be working with service users right from day one. I'm not saying it's a perfect situation at the moment, but this document provides the structure for the way that we should be providing services across the country. So it's really key. I think also, I'm really saddened to hear there's still discrimination, and I think what we need to be doing is addressing that discrimination in a collaborative way. So if we do acknowledge that some GPs or mental health practitioners are still responding to individuals differently because of the dual diagnosis that they're presenting with, then we should be challenging that, and we should be challenging it both as individuals at practitioner level, but also as a system approach. And that's why it's important that we've got organisations like the Sun Network that can be used for advocacy purposes to actually go and address that with an individual and their practitioner, or whether we do that as a kind of system-wide Sun Network provide feedback to commissioners that we can then make changes. But we all have to take a responsibility to address that discrimination. I think it's really important.
Right.
Right, the second question is, why are there still not sufficient funds to support those in recovery? Hostilic care is so important alongside other support offered by staff. Why is the media not regularly, proactively reporting on this?
Okay, in terms of funding, the public and health sector has taken a bit of a battering when it comes to funding. It's challenging times, and we have to make the best use of resources we've got. So we need to make sure that as a system-wide, that we are making sure that we're focusing our funding and our resources to meet need and in the best efficient way that we can do so. So recently, as you may well be aware, we have re-tendered the Cambridgeshire Drug and Alcohol Service, and there's also been a new re-procurement of the mental health community service called the Good Life Service as well. And both are really good examples of how service use has been very much an integral part of helping providing consultation feedback in terms of the way they want the services to be, and also helping design and evaluate so we can, choose a service to best meet the needs of the community. But it is challenging. We have got, there is difficulties, and we have to keep changing. There has been a lot of movement in the Cambridgeshire service over the last year. We have had changes in the way that we've got our fixed buildings, but there's some really innovative and exciting work happening as a result of kind of challenging financial times. We have to look differently at the way we do things. So, for example, we've got, there'll be an outreach bus that will be going around delivering care in communities. We'll make sure that we've got this new recovery structure within the Drug and Alcohol Service, similar to the Good Life Service, where we're actually running groups and developing peer-led support within the communities that we've got. So using the assets both that individuals have got and our community has in order to meet need. So yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's challenging. Nationally, we're in this really difficult position, but it doesn't mean that we can't still rise to a challenge. And I think that's so important. But we have to do that together. And service users are really a key part of a kind of a co-production model. So we can talk to each other, we can listen to each other, we can make sure that the resources we've got are best used. And if we're not using them in the right way, we need to change what we're doing and make some other decisions. But it's important that we can do that together. There's another question about holistic care. I absolutely agree. Individuals that have got, drug and alcohol difficulties, mental health difficulties, that doesn't just happen in isolation. Generally, there's housing difficulties, family relationship breakdown, money difficulties, there might be criminal justice issues. We cannot run services in isolation anymore. It doesn't work. We need to make sure the person is at the heart of the care system and we meet the individual needs, and that will change on a regular basis. Risk goes up and down, people's issues change, and therefore we need to make sure that all of our services are working together rather than a push-pull model, which is really not going to work. So it's important that we do that. Sometimes the system isn't perfect, and I recognise that there are absolutely challenges to that. And in an ideal world, I would love a lead professional to follow every single individual around so we can make sure that care is coordinated. But we best use the resources we've got at the moment. But I'm hoping in future that we can perhaps work on the challenges that we've absolutely got. In terms of the media, I can't really respond to that one. There have been some positive news stories in the media, but also there's been some negative ones as well. We try and work with our media colleagues to ensure that they promote the good work that is undertaken around drugs and alcohol and mental health. But obviously I can't obviously make that decision.
Can I say something about
Yeah.
peer involvement? You were talking about how thinking creatively and working in a different way gives us new opportunities. For the short while that I've been around, I see an amazing passion and energy from people who themselves have made big strides and had huge improvements in their own issues with drug and alcohol, their own issues of addiction. And those people bring an amazing amount of heart and passion to helping people the way they've been helped. So I think this is part of what we're tapping into, is that the people who've been through it themselves really understand and they really care and they're willing to really give of themselves. And so it's not just that we have a professional who's paid to offer like a medical solution, it's that we as communities give of ourselves, give of our own experiences and our own what we've learned to help each other. There's a lot of sacrificial giving that goes on from people who've experienced addiction themselves who want to help other people to make the same kind of improvement they've enjoyed.
I absolutely agree. And I've been doing this role for about 10 years, and in the last 5-6 years, the amount of steps we've moved towards having what I would call a different approach to the way that we run services, but we involve our peers. And that's not just a tick box exercise by any means. You know, we've got a strong volunteer base in our structured services. So CG have a strong volunteer base who absolutely provide invaluable support and care to people that come in. We've also got, we can't forget our Reach Your Care networks as well, you know, our 12-step approach, who, I mean, it's a fantastic example across the world of how people with lived experience can provide support to other people who are experiencing the same difficulties. I mean, it amazes me how big that network is, and it grows and it grows and it grows. The amount we can achieve by pulling together is ultimately amazing. And things like, I'm a little bit biased, but things like the Edge Cafe, for example, a really good example of how you don't have to have professionals running services. You know, we can have our service users developing, designing and running services for themselves. And it, you know, we don't as professionals need to really get involved in some of the smaller services. We can provide guidance and we can provide background support, but ultimately people with lived experience have got an amazing amount to give, and they are a visible display of how recovery can work, and that is so motivational for new people coming through. So important.
Excellent. Great.
The next question: when will drug and alcohol problems be seen as mental health issues? They are not separate but integrated.
Absolutely, they need to be integrated. So some of the difficulties, are practical difficulties at the moment, that the funding of drug and alcohol services and the funding of mental health services are different. So the CCG are responsible for funding mental health provision, so clinical health provision, so the mental health services that are provided, for example, by CPFT are funded and commissioned by the CCG. The local authority, which is who I work for, are responsible for funding and developing drug and alcohol services. So we have very much a collaborative approach in terms of commissioners, both commissioners coming together and making sure that we're developing and designing services to meet the needs of people with dual issues, so coexisting conditions. However, the funding elements are still very separate, which does present some degree of problems. However, by developing the principles document, which we did together, it fundamentally lays the landscape out for change. So it says that, you know, the provision of drug and alcohol services and mental health services are designed and should be delivered to meet the needs of people with both experiencing difficulties in both those areas. That there should be no discrimination, and we need to make sure that care is coordinated. And that is the benchmark. And if that isn't happening, then we need to know so we can make changes. There has been some challenges along the way, and you know, we are moving absolutely. I really do feel we're moving in the right direction. If you think what we've got now, we've had increased investment for mental health in terms of we've got a really strong crisis service with mental health now, which meets the needs of both mental health and dual diagnosis. The PRISM, the primary mental health model, is really developing, and again that has been designed with both drugs and alcohol and mental health difficulties in mind. And then we've got our secondary mental health services, which are the specialist services. There are definitely moves, and the exciting stuff that's happening in the community with the Good Life service, again, both the mental health commissioners and the drug and alcohol commissioners myself have done that together, with a view that actually potentially in the future they might be integrated in terms of a recovery model. So we absolutely talk together, we plan the services that we provide together. However, at the moment the funding aspects are separate, which does still cause some difficulties. But absolutely there's collaboration in terms of the way that we're working. And absolutely in agreement that when we look at individuals with coexisting conditions, these are people that are experiencing difficulties. They're not two different people, they're one person that needs sometimes support from different services. Drug and alcohol services are not mental health specialists, they're not a crisis care, but they are experts in treating people with substance misuse issues, and there's an acknowledgement that the majority of people that come through the door of drug and alcohol services will have mental health challenges. We know that 70 to 80% of our cohort will have mental health difficulties through the wide range of spectrum, from kind of mild issues through to quite moderate and severe. And therefore, there is an understanding and an expectation that anybody who walks through the door will have to receive some degree of support around mental health. If it becomes out of the reach or the specialism of drug and alcohol services, then we'll have to involve our specialist mental health services for support purposes in order to make sure that we're presenting the best degree of need, we're meeting needs for individuals. We also know, if we don't get it right, that we will have deaths. We know that our drug-related death rates have increased. We know that mental health is a clear factor in deaths, and we also know that people with mental health difficulties also have poor levels of physical health need as well. So we absolutely know, if we don't get this right, that there are repercussions for individuals and families, and that's what drives us forward.
Right, so it's not, it's just my own opinion personally, that society's view of mental health has really come a long way over the last few years. That there's much less stigma, and people are recognizing that mental health is something that most of us have some interaction with. So it takes time for this change in public perception to fold into the way that the services are commissioned and the way that things are structured and the way that money's done. So I'm hopeful that that things will be put closer together as time goes by, because that's a reflection of how the greater society sees things, as realizing that things are closer together. But that's just
I think you're
personal
right.
opinion.
I think you're right. There is still definitely stigmas around drug and alcohol misuse as well there, and I think we've challenged the mental health. It's challenging the drug and alcohol misuse at the same time. But again, as I said before, I think it's for all of us, whether we're patients, whether we're professionals, to challenge that. If we feel that we're not responded to equally, if we think there's discrimination, if we think that we've got an inequality, then we need to say, look, I feel really uncomfortable at the way you're treating me, or the services that you're not offering me, and I would like to take this further. I think we all need to do that together. We all play a role in order to address it, because otherwise we're never going to be able to move forward to the degree we need to.
Amen. You've got to be open, haven't you?
Absolutely.
And you've got to be honest. That's the
Yeah.
thing about any of these issues that you've got. You've got to be honest with everybody.
And the expectation that if you've got drug and alcohol difficulties, there will be some level of mental health with it in terms of difficulty, because actually the minority won't have them. It's the majority that will.
Great, thanks a lot, Linda, and thank you, Susie. So to the audience, I hope you found this beneficial. A big thank you to everyone who's been involved with making this happen. Susie, Linda, and behind the camera, Victoria. You, as an audience, will be able to view this Q&A on YouTube, on social media. So please get in touch with us if you'd like to know more about the work that we do at the Sun Network. We're here to amplify the voice of service users. So if anyone out there hearing this has got something that you'd like to be heard by the services or by the commissioners, do get in touch with us with all the details that are provided. Our website is sunnetwork.org.uk. And thank you.
Thank you.